So welcome everybody here and in the Zoom. So we have this wonderful session here with several speakers, and this is organized together by the Kone Foundation Forest Dialogues, and we have Frans Anton Flander here from Kone Foundation, and he will give some indications about what the Forest Dialogues means. It is a special day today. These dialogues happening all around Finland, many events. And this is one of those in English, and we will also have people from abroad here. So first we will have as a speaker here Jakob Donner-Amnell from the University of Eastern Finland. He has a very long history of studying the Finnish and global forest industry, and he will first be speaking about the Finnish and global forest industry challenges and connections topic. And after his presentation, we will have some questions to him and some dialogue around his topics. And followed by that, we will have Sergio Baffoni from the Environmental Paper Network, and he will be joining us by Zoom and also have a PowerPoint presentation and then some questions to Sergio. And then after that, it's open dialogue and time. And we have about 1.5 hours, but there's no rush to leave. This room is reserved for us for longer. So welcome.
Thank you, Markus. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with everyone who is in the room, and also thank you for all those who are joining us on Zoom today on behalf of Kone Foundation. My name is Frans Anton Flander. I am representing here Kone Foundation's For the Woods funding program, which has been behind this initiative of the Forest Dialogues in the context of Finland. And the history of the dialogues in a nutshell is that in 2024 we had a couple of confidential test dialogues with key players in the Finnish forestry forest sector, different NGOs, academia, industry, people involved, and now the day has come for an open forest dialogue day. There are around 100 dialogues being organized all over Finland during this day. Some of them may be a bit earlier already this week, some of them may be a bit later this week, but in general this is the main day for the dialogues. The Kone Foundation For the Woods program was launched in 2023. It's continuing until further notice to fund research, arts, journalism, and also activism within the context of forests. Of course, behind this program, there is a concern about the future of our forests, future of our planet. Also, what the foundation is seeking with this program is to get multiple different, also critical voices heard within the forest debate that is ongoing not only in Finland but I would say globally. And apart from funding projects, the foundation is also seeking to find interesting topics to make reports about, also to come up with different kinds of initiatives, and these dialogue initiatives has been one of those. Without further ado, I will just quickly comment that I will also be making some sort of a manual record of the discussion. It will be then used to summarize the Great Forest Dialogue Day and to make alternative scenarios for future forests in Finland. The summary and the scenarios will be published later on for open use by all, but this is strictly anonymous. No one's identity will be touched or revealed in any way in the records, but just to note you that I will be writing here down with my computer at the same time as the dialogue goes on. I will wish you all a very nice dialogue now for the next upcoming hours, and I guess it's time to give the floor to Jakob.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah. Hello, and hello to all of you in the Zoom and in the room, and I thank the organizers for this opportunity to jump into this very broad theme, which is familiar to me since quite a long time. Started this journey into the global forest industry about 20 years ago, and that was when I was editing and writing a book, especially on the northern forest industry in the Nordic countries, in Canada, and in Russia. And so this is a very contemporary book. It's from 21 years back. So published by Ashgate at the time. But that is when we started to look into the connections, what was happening in the Nordic countries and in the Northern Hemisphere, but also we looked at some connections to what happened in the Southern Hemisphere at the time. Of course, things were happening, but a lot more has been happening since then. So that's the issue. One of the issues here that much has happened in the Northern Hemisphere, but in a way even more has happened in the Southern Hemisphere in this global forest industry. And there are still connections between the northern and the southern part, of course, in this respect, but they are different from what they were. So, but that's a part of my presentation. Yeah. So only very shortly about me. So I'm actually a sociologist, but I have specialized on forest industries, especially in this Nordic and northern context. But I've studied it from both from history, from actual development, but also I've made so-called foresights or futures studies about this theme, and so I have published books like, or taken part in publishing, editing books like this first one, which is more academic, more basic research, while these other two ones here in Finnish, are more foresight work, looking at what might happen in especially in the Finnish forest sector in the years to come. What are the possibilities or challenges that the Finnish forest sector was having about 10 years ago when we wrote those publications. So some of you from Finland might have heard about me because forest industry is still big, but academic research in that sector is rather small nowadays. So when something more surprising or maybe tricky or happens, I often get calls from journalists. Can you explain what is happening? And then we don't understand it. We need more background. And can you give a statement or can you give some background? And then I ask, why do you call me? Because nobody else is ready to answer the question. Because they don't have the information, or because they are not ready to give a public statement, because they work in some institutions where you can't do that too often. So it's really funny in a way that there is quite little academic background given to big events and happening in that industry in Finland. Okay, but now we turn to the outline for today. You can do it. Yeah. Okay. Industrial forest use is of course not a new thing. It has happened for centuries, and especially since about mid 19th century, paper and pulp and board production started besides then sawmilling, which was older, had been there for some time. And of course, many things have happened in that industry in Europe, North America, and globally. But this time we really focus on rather recent trends over the last 20 years. So the starting point is really sorry for that. It's not that old anyway. Still 10, 15 years ago, it was paper for printing that was the big issue, so to say, for not all companies all over the world, but for the big Western companies in Nordic European countries and in North America. And these companies focused quite a lot on that, and also started to globalize, internationalize their operations on that basis to North America, to South America, and also to Asia. But then something sudden happened, namely that the paper consumption started to drop all over the place, but starting from North America and Europe, and that was big shock and crisis for these companies that had focused quite a lot on that segment, and during a short period, the companies and the organizations had big visions for a renewal of that sector through new products. Some of you might remember, and also in other countries, similar visions were presented. But this is not how things turned out at all. Quite different things happened, namely that instead of new products or paper, packaging business is now the big thing all over the world. And China is the biggest both producer and the biggest market. And China is also importing a lot of especially roundwood and pulp and so actually Finland's and also Canada's and even USA's role now in the global market is to serve the Chinese market with pulp. And also South America is doing the same as well, but it's really a new role that these so-called Western companies did not have before, and they did not expect that they would have such a role one day. But that's how things are. So you can really say it's a big change. And what we will describe this in more detail. But of course we will study the consequences of these changes, and then we try to look into the future a little bit aware, which are the challenges today, because the present state of this global forest industry is maybe not that stable. It might look like that, but I'm quite sure that changes will happen in the years to come. So let's jump to the next one, and we can even jump over the next one and then go to the following one. So yeah, this is good. So okay, I told most of these things already, and now the big point here is that we will discuss pulp production quite a lot, because that's the biggest product in the global market for forest produce. So there are other products, but pulp has really got into such a position, which is quite interesting and even strange in some way. And so it is today, but still 10, 20 years back, the amount of pulp was almost as big, but most of it was used by, say, companies in their, so to say, in-house. So it was produced in some countries, like even also Finland, but then the companies processed the pulp to paper in Finland or in their own factories in Europe or some other places. So in the market, not that much circulated between countries, but pulp was an in-house product mostly, and paper for printing was the product, the segment that brought a lot of turnover and also a lot of profit to the companies, and of course then into the national economies of the countries that had such production. And there was really, for a long time, there was this you can say globalization hype and the reason was that these our companies, so to say, we have the market here in Europe or some other place, but the market for paper is growing more rapidly in other places, so we should go there, and maybe we can get some more resources as well. But to enlarge our turnover and get our profits bigger, we have to go elsewhere, and that's what the companies did, especially Nordic companies, but also some North American companies did moves of that kind into South America and Asia and so on. So really a globalization was happening in this sector. So it looked. And it was also in the Finnish case, it was also supported by the fact that in forest sector technology, some Finnish companies like Valmet are really big actors, and Pöyry, nowadays known as AFRY, is really a big actor globally. And on top of this, more in a way practical. I mean, Finnish media and whatever followed and also in other countries followed this. But there was one debate theme which was bigger than the others, namely that this looks like it's working well for the companies, and also some of the new locations seem to like these investments and so operations, but maybe not all of them, but some of them at least. So it's working quite well. But what will follow from this is paper production and pulp production and even logging then moving from the northern hemisphere into the southern hemisphere. Will we, in a way, looks like a good business concept for the time being, but will we lose all the production and even a lot of the forest use, which we have been dependent on? So there was a kind of a hype, but also some worries there that will we lose in the end? And this was, of course, a very Nordic or Western perspective, but this is how that discussion was. Okay, and yeah, and when the forest paper for printing then really went into this crisis mode, and production decreased, and with the production also the profits and many problems occurred. Factories were closed, people were sacked, and so on. Quite soon, still, the forest cluster, it was called a cluster those days, not only the companies, but the technology companies and many organizations and state research institutes, they produced a new vision. And it looks like this, that after this crisis phase, the turnover and the value of the sector, of the whole cluster will increase again and quite rapidly. So just look, 1/3 more of value in about 10 years, and very soon, starting from now at least, we will double the value of all of the cluster in all. So really ambitious, really optimistic, and this is not what happened. But for some years, the companies and much of the Finnish organizations, even the state, seem to believe that yes, it will not disappear, it will renew itself, we'll get many new products in big volumes, and this is really a good project. We should really try to make it happen. But this is not what happened. And has to be said that in many so-called big forest industry countries like Sweden, Canada, also USA, similar visions with similar even products or plans were published. So this was not really only a Finnish thing, but in these so-called all actors, the mood was quite the same. But then, okay, next one. And here we can see this is now paper consumption last 16, 70 years. And what is interesting here is that okay, no new products present, not a single one. And actually, overall, the growth in tons consumed is not that big. It's about 1% per year or so. So very little. But more interesting, what is more interesting is that, of course, that in the bottom, they are especially the first one, the paper printing. That's a product that has really lost it. So almost half of the production has melted really. And what has then increased is then this light blue one, that is packaging products of different kinds and also tissue, namely hygiene products. But so this is the picture, the broad picture of the global consumption, which of course follows the production as well, or the production follows the consumption. So not really a growth area altogether, but some areas have grown, while some others have really decreased. Okay, next one. So that's the more important. Okay, this is what I already told you, and this was not totally surprising after all. So because it had started already in Europe and also in China and Asia, because of increasing trade and later globalization and increasing trade was one background factor. Then e-commerce came more into the picture. Now it's very big, of course. And takeaway food is also a part of the picture of packaging being so important and has contained so much growth in Asia, also in Europe, in North America, not that much in Latin America as far as I know, but you have to correct me. And a part of that is of course that China has turned in the biggest user and also producer of these forest industrial products. And packaging is by any means the biggest area or segment there. But then we come into the interesting territory with many international or global consequences. China imports a lot of roundwood and chips and also recycled fiber from all over the world, and especially from the Asia, but also then pulp from South America, but also still from the Northern Hemisphere, from North America and from Europe. So market pulp has grown into a big area, the biggest area, and the most important area of forest industrial market then. And China's share of that big, most important area is really almost half. So it's really big amounts, about 70 million tons of pulp that move over the seas to China. China is also producing pulp itself, but it needs a lot of this import pulp. And why is this interesting? Because it has led to a lot more production in South America, also in parts of Europe, like in Finland, and some of the producers have increased their production, and especially they have started to export it to Europe and to China. And what is even more important, maybe the biggest consequence come from the fact that this market pulp production and export has been the most profitable product for most producers in South America, in North America, in Europe. So not that it's all the business of this industry in any place, but if you have one product which is more profitable than the others, and its market is expanding, then you focus on that quite a lot. And this is what has happened, especially in Latin America, but also to some part in the Nordic countries. And the so-called northern bleached softwood kraft, namely the pulp that is produced in the northern hemisphere, its market price is higher than of euca, so-called hardwood pulp. And so that is also why these northern producers have focused quite a lot of it, because when you get a better price and maybe a good margin, then you really focus on that. So this is really the reason why in only a few years, two really mega mills producing so-called softwood pulp have been constructed in Finland. So they are the biggest in the world, the ones in Äänekoski and Kemi. The Finns know these places, but yeah. So some critics might say that what about recovered fiber? Could we replace some of this pulp with recovered fiber? That happens. Actually, over half of the resource base for in paper and board production comes from recovered fiber. So its use is really big. It's possible to expand that a little bit, but it's not that easy, because not all fiber products can be recycled, and also this trade with that recovered fiber has been affected by the China's import ban on it, which took place some years back. So until then, China had imported really big amounts of that, about 20 million tons every year. But then it's told the world that we will take it. You can use it yourself instead. And that was a big shock especially for US, because they had no systems for how to use them. Okay, next one. Okay, yeah, here you see well, if you can see the title of the paper, I can see it very well. But the point is that this is the market pulp growth, and by continents. And the easy explanation is that all growth has come from China. All other continents, the numbers are almost exactly the same as during 20 years. But it's China that has produced the growth in this market. Okay, next one. And here you see these market pulp shifts. So the biggest blue dot is the fact that Latin America is with almost 40% of the global market, is the biggest in that pulp market, and most of that goes to China. And actually then the other smaller blue dot is China, which is also producing some market pulp, but much less. And then the bigger dark gray dot there is it's Europe, which is now bigger in the market pulp business than USA, which is the last dot there. So still 10-50 years back, Canada and USA were much bigger in this market, but nowadays Europe is bigger than USA and also bigger than Canada, but that dot is only US. So and then small dots for South Africa and so, but they are really small ones. Okay, next one. So that's, and here you can see more clearly then this so So the rising curve is this hardwood pulp, the eucalyptus pulp. So it has really doubled the market for that pulp quality, mainly produced in Latin America and Asia. While then this softwood pulp from the northern hemisphere, some growth, but very little. So really, you can say that this hardwood pulp has, well, not taken over everything, but before they were even, but now it's twice the size this hardwood pulp market. So that's really a big change. Okay, next one. Okay, so here is about this hardwood pulp in bigger detail. So Brazil, Chile, and now there's also Uruguay are the biggest producers and exporters, and most of that comes from plantations. Not everything. Yeah, I think Markus will tell more about that part, of course. And there are some Suzano, CMP, Arauco are among the biggest, and they are really big companies. They are as big as the Finnish forest companies today, which is a new thing. We thought in the Western countries that our forest companies will always be the big ones, but now these are as big as the biggest in the Western countries. And there is still in South America a small presence from Ibero-Finnish companies. Again, UPM has 2 mills in Uruguay, and Stora Enso has stakes in two pulp factories in Brazil and Uruguay as well. And still, Finnish technology companies like Valmet and others, they also produce technology, pulp boilers and board machines and you name it for the new investments in all continents and also in Latin America. Okay, so and so then we have Asia, where actually the amount of pulp produced is bigger, but most of that goes only to the Chinese domestic market or to other domestic markets. So Asia is not really an exporter, but mainly a producer. But there you have also some very big companies like APP, Asia Pulp and Paper, April, Nippon Paper, a Japanese company, Shandong is a Chinese company, and actually, when I was talking about the globalization, Asia was the continent where the Finnish companies went first, and some also American companies went as well, but they have disappeared from Asia. It was too difficult, the business culture, whatever reasons, but they a little bit is there. UPM has still a small paper mill in China, and so, but really, Asia was not the continent where the Western companies wanted to stay. But of course, the big issue here, all in all, is that how much is it possible to even increase the pulp production in both South America and in Asia. So by question, I think we'll go into the how much can it increase. Are we approaching ecological and social political limits for so extensive use of land and forest? So that's one of the big, yeah. Okay, we are close to this. Yeah, next one. Okay, last about. I think I've said most of these things already, so I will not explain this very much because I think Latin America and Asia is the real big issue here. But one interesting note is that really, especially Europe, but also to some part North America, has still some stake in this global pulp market because softwood has still some higher quality and strength, and that is why it's still used in packaging products and also in some other places. But one consequence of this focus on softwood pulp is that the logging levels have been on the rise in the Nordic countries. Paper production used less forest, less resource per ton than pulp production. So now we use more of a forest for lower value, which is quite of a strange outcome of this development. So value added has decreased. Okay. And okay, next one. And so there are many open questions here, and some more of a practical business type business perspective. Will China still be the motor in this forest market, especially packaging and pulp market? Is that or will it slow down? There's much speculation about China's economy anyway, and if China is not the motor, the growth engine, so to say, which countries, which markets, which products would then be the growth engines instead of China? So that's more a narrow issue. But if there is still growth in this and market pulp is still growing, from where will that come? Still from Latin America, from other locations? And what about then this northern softwood pulp? Will it still keep its position, or will it be substituted by cheaper eucalyptus pulp? And then are, of course, very general issues. We might have trade disputes, trade wars coming even tonight, affecting all trade and also this forest sector globally. And of course, we have a big issue globally about the forest resource. Will we use it still much for this purpose or for other purposes, which are also very important, like food or feed or energy and carbon sink and so on. And of course, then for the forest sector, it's a big issue and a big hope still that we would produce higher value from less resource. This would be socially, politically very, very welcomed, but it's not easy to get that done. But maybe you jump to the last one if you can do that, because that's a concluding. I have many in between, but take the last one. Okay, sorry, more than the last one, but I think yeah. So we have challenges here from a narrow and from a broader perspective. There is potential also in this, because forest resource, forest fiber, and its side streams and its biogenic CO2 could also be a point of departure for new products. So the forest industry should need to go into that direction, especially if its present markets will shrink, and if there is also political pressure to move in that way. But we are far from that situation still. So until something surprising and positive happens in that respect, we'll have a lot of pressure or let's say tension in many places around this very big business in the north and in the south. And I think it's Markus' turn to comment on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Jakob. So great. Yeah. So do you have any questions to Jakob or comments?
Maybe I could thank you for the presentation. It's should I speak louder?
Okay. Speak up.
I think your conclusion was optimistic. You said we have a huge potential, and this is also a bit my concern is that pulping, the strategy of going for pulp production has this lock-in effect that then then you want to capture the emissions and whatever, and use them for some products. How do you see in this current situation is evolving? Will we see carbon capture at pulp mills soon?
Not soon, but I think we'll see that in about maybe 10 years, 10, 15 years. Still, the costs for it are very high. The companies can't carry that financial burden themselves. So a lot of public money is necessary from nationally or EU level or whatever. So either the costs come down, or then the public has to bring in a lot of subsidies to make it happen. So it's not rapid, if as far as we know now. So I don't. It's not a quick fix for the companies or for societies, and not even for emission decrease. I'm sorry to say that. I would hope more would happen, but it's hard to believe right now.
Really quick, I'd like to invite Henry from online to ask a question, and then.
Thank you, Jakob, for your very lucid presentation. My question might be a little bit off, but I still want to ask it. How do you see the new products, the startup, for example, clothes from cellulose or some kind of new product like lignin? Do they have a potential to come like new products, new winners? Because in the newspapers there was something like that they are still startups and they are not really growing up. When I was in those projects like over 10 years ago, they were always cut down because they cost too much. So I just wanted to ask, do you see any potential for new startups, new products coming up from paper and pulp industry? Because the logic of paper and pulp industry making more with less value, well, that's quite the normal there, but I would hope that it would change someday. Thank you.
Well, a big theme, of course, and thank you for the question. Those hopes have been there for decades, almost as long as this industry has been a big sector. A lot of research and technology has been developed around it, and around also new products that possibly could be produced on the same resource base. So it's not a new theme, really, you know that. Of course, there are opportunities always, and a lot of research and development are made around those in most bigger companies. But the big obstacle is that in most of the products that have been mentioned in the debate, from textile to e-fuels and chemicals, there is a big business which is mainly fossil based, and production is cheap. So you need to be you need to produce the same products on a forest base, but they should be as good, as cheap especially, and in big volumes before they can really take over some part of the market. And that's not easy when you have to compete with the Asian textile industry, the oil industry, the chemicals industry, big industries. Only if a lot of regulation comes into the market and changes the conditions, so that fossil resource use is heavily sanctioned through different mechanisms, or then through subsidies, more might happen sooner. But as long as those that kind of policies are not put in place, it will be very slow. Wood construction is to some part a different case, but also there you have a lot of competition with cement and steel construction of the same type. But there the possibilities are a little bit bigger maybe because it's an existing sector and so it doesn't start from zero. So but generally it is really tricky. And what is one threat to the new possibilities always that as long as the present business performs well, there is no reason as long as you have growth and decent margins for present business. Why would you turn to something else, which is risky in many ways and need a lot of capital?
And now I have a question in the room, and then after this question, should we then maybe move into Sergio? All right, Sergio, you get ready after this.
Yeah, short question. Continuing the first question. So you said that it's like important that there should be something which will make it cheaper and better. So more sustainability, more CO2, but also cheaper economically. It could be a technology, but does there exist such a technology?
No. So if you are talking about new products, they are from the forest industry. They are not cheap enough. The technology is not there in most cases, and they can't compete in the market with the cheap fossil-based products.
So why? So why it was called optimistic?
Sorry?
Why it was called optimistic?
I thought you were optimistic that you wrote there is a huge potential, but that's true. There is this potential, but maybe it's hard to realize this.
When I was a young guy, I had the potential to enter into the North American Hockey League, but it didn't happen. I mean, okay, maybe stupid way of putting it for an economic sector, but potential and implementation are different things.
Can I still continue? I think there is some in the potential there is this lignin stream which you could use. You could also dump it somewhere if you have then energy to replace that lignin that is burned. So that is maybe feasible to do.
Yeah,
If you want to capture emissions, where do you capture that from? Not from lignin.
But you can maybe count them as negative if you dump them somewhere in the future.
Yeah, very interesting discussion. So maybe there's a logic. There's been a lot of discussion here in Finland about that. It's not value added enough. The volumes of logging have increased, but still you produce pulp. But I assume there's a kind of logic that if it would be more value adding, it would use less of the resource, and there would be less pressure on the forests. But I mean, if it still continues to be a good business to have bulk woods, then that still continue, and you would still have that new products on the side to make double profit. So that's one question you can think about. Also later we can discuss that more after Sergio's presentation. And that was a very interesting point you made about the other industries in which the paper sector is competing with this new plastics and biofuels with the oil industry, which is very heavily subsidized. So it's an interesting thing that in that way, if you think it like that way, you could say that part of the problem actually surges from this dependence on fossil fuels that then externalizes the pressure on forests in a way, maybe. But some thoughts, and well, maybe we now go to Sergio from who looks more at the global south setting, and we have some answers to your questions as well.
I say one remark at this point before we turn to the southern part, namely that I am optimistic about the potential globally, but I'm pessimistic about the potential in the northern countries or in Nordic countries. And as long as this present business performs very well, I am afraid that not much happens before something happens with these big export of pulp. As long as it's there in its present volumes, it steers the operations and strategies of the companies too much. Only if it decreases a bit or even a lot, then they have to turn to other possibilities, also new ones. But maybe not before.
And maybe before I forget, after Sergio, we can also maybe discuss a bit more this role of China, because I was curious to know why did it say no to recycled paper and stuff like that, and so on. But maybe, so Sergio, he's part of this environmental paper network, and they have produced, for example, a large report on Suzano recently, which is a very important company also with presence in Finland, the biggest global producer of market pulp and so on.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Sergio, for being able to join us.
Hi. Thank you for. Can you see my
Yes.
screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for inviting. It's difficult to talk after Jakob Donner-Amnell presentation, which is huge, but I'll make try. I present EPN Environmental Paper Network is a network of NGOs, so I will present an approach a little bit more, let's say, activistic. And we'll focus on, but we also look at the development of the pulp and paper industry, of course, with great attention. And our takeaway is that there are one big element of continuity and 4 elements of discontinuity that I will present here. Continuity was already said is consumption and production growth. We since the 50s. Pulp and paper is one of the commodities that never stopped to grow. And if we look at the side on the right, also in the coming in this decade is still keeping growing, maybe slow, a little bit slower, but still growing. And the reason is what is growing actually. There is has been already mentioned a big shift from graphic paper to packaging. Digitalization has almost killed not killed, but created problems to the graphic papers, while boosted the consumption of packaging for e-commerce and takeaway. Tissue remains a little bit stable with a little growth, but not much as expected, because the expected growth boom of middle class in India and other growing countries did not materialize, so it's postponed. But let's see for the future. But basically, the big boom is the packaging that is consuming a lot of pulp, and it's supposed to keep growing in the coming years. This also is increased by another process parallel, that is the shift from plastic to paper. Given that the big impacts of plastic packaging, especially throwaway single-use packaging, business, instead of reducing that, just decided to shift towards paper, which is actually the material which is more economically convenient, profitable, flexible, as much as paper. We have seen a big number of commitments by high-profile companies of shifting from plastic to paper. As a result, now we chop down every year 3 billion trees just for throwaway packaging. Basically, almost 40% of the industrial logged trees are going to produce paper, and more than half of the paper is going into packaging. And this brings another consequence, which is the problem with recycling, on which I'm a little bit less optimistic, because actually everybody can take a stack of newspapers, put it in a bucket of water, and in 2 days the paper starts to dissolve. You can do your own homemade recycled paper, but try to do it with a Tetra Pak, or try to do it with a paper cup. It doesn't work, because there are so many layers of plastic, of coating, of wax, of aluminum, of other chemical products, that it's practically impossible. As a result, recycling rate has tipped, and now is starting to decline, also because the the production of unrecyclable packaging, paper-based packaging, is growing. By the way, I would be not so sure about the data about recycling rate, because they include the scraps that are sent out to, let's say, India or Indonesia to be recycled there, and you don't know what really will happen there. By the way, it's the same reason why China stopped to import the scraps from abroad, because they were poorly sorted, and that there was basically a sanitary reason. And then the other big which is also related to the previous elements, the big discontinuity that was also analyzed by Jakob Donner-Amnell is the shift towards south. We are looking on monitoring the new pulp mills that are projected to be built globally. The pulp mills and not the paper mills, because you can produce paper importing pulp from all over the world, and it can work. Everybody do it. But if you want to produce pulp, you have to be not too many kilometers far away from the wood source. So if you identify new pulp mills, means also that will be a demand of pulp mill in a short term. And so you can also see how much is near to intact forest landscape and so on. And we see that most of the new pulp mills, the red one are the big one, the purple are the smaller, are basically being built in South America and in Southeast Asia. There is still some growth in Europe, especially in the Nordics, as mentioned, because packaging needs long fibers for resistance to traction and to friction, which are produced by coniferous trees and not by eucalyptus. So there will be still a demand for long fibers. This is the new capacity expansion by region, and we see Latin America again and Asia Pacific, APEC, that are the biggest one. The reason are many for this. One, for example, is that cheaper labor cost. This scale that you see is made by Arauco to show how little they pay their employee. They are very proud of it. But I think that the main reason is the speed in growing. So in Europe, the forests are at the end of the capacity of exploitation. In the Nordic countries, in many Nordic countries, we have seen that forests already are starting to emit more emission than they can absorb because of the quicker rate. They get always younger because we cannot wait because of the demand that the full cycle is completed. And in the Iberic Peninsula, in southwestern Europe, where eucalyptus has been dramatically expanded, every year there is a huge forest fire, and the governments, local governments, are stopped the increase of intensification of plantation. So if demand for pulp is growing, we have to import it. And from where? From where the trees grow quicker. In Europe, in Northern Europe, trees, the cycle before harvest is, let's say, 20 years. In the more northern areas where it's colder, it might be 40, even 80 years in some rare case. But an eucalyptus can be harvested between 5 years ages of growth. So it's much quicker. So the demand is much rapidly meant. If we look at the prediction of the industry, they calculate the rate of profitability and the amount of opportunity of investment in different areas, and basically they identify that South America has the hugest potential together with Southeast Asia. Of course, there is still a good space for Europe, as mentioned, because of the long fibers that are needed for packaging. And if we look at the major top pulp producer, we see companies from South America and Southeast Asia. The first 5 companies are from South America and Southeast Asia, and Indonesia, actually. That's a problem because those are the areas where deforestation is occurring. In Indonesia, it's direct related to pulp and paper production, which lately pulp and paper, basically wood fibers, become the first driver of deforestation in this country. In South America, is say that no, but paper is produced in another area, not where there is the deforestation. We will see this is also problematic. Anyway, deforestation, the large-scale plantations have a huge amount of impacts on communities, land grabbing, dramatic reduction of water resources, and consequently forest fires, and direct deforestation, and so on and so on. 3 case studies: Chile, where the industry basically expanded on area given during the dictatorship and stolen by 2 indigenous communities. After democracy, indigenous communities started to reclaim their land, and it was denied, and the conflict went deeper and deeper, and now it's completely out of control. But this is the reason. Indonesia, where there is also a lot of conflicts with local communities. There is huge peat fires because peat is drained to develop plantations, and then it emits huge amounts. Indonesia emits actually more than industrialized country, and just 2 companies alone emits more than entire industrialized countries. And also violence. Those 2 persons that you see in the picture as both killed in conflicts related to land. Just since we are talking about Indonesia, there is a pulp mill that will be is being built in this corner of Borneo, the first one in the area, and as you can see, it will be wipe out all the remaining forests of the island. And then Brazil. Brazil it's important because it's the epicenter of the paper pulp boom. In this country, paper production increased by 1 million tons every year, on top of the previous. So it's and mostly concentrated in the Cerrado area. It's a huge impact. This industry claim to be green, to actually replant in areas that has been deforested by cattle ranchers. That's not completely true, because they plant, but they do not plant forest, they plant plantation. And actually, they finish the job, the deforestation job, because the Cerrado, it's a sparse forest, but has very deep roots that keep sprucing even after deforestation, even after a fire, they keep sprucing. So basically, all the cattle, all the pasture are a mixed environment where natural vegetation try to come again. But when the land is plowed deeply to plant eucalyptus, there is no, the roots are away, and there is no more regrowth, and there will be no more regrowth. But the problem is, this is not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is another one, that by buying this land to the cattle ranchers, they actually push deforestation further. Pulp and paper industry, it's a highly technological industry. They need reliable infrastructure, good transportation, reliable electricity supply, and so on and so on. You cannot build a pulp mill in the deforestation front. If you do it, it's a crazy project. So they wait that somebody else do the deforestation, And then after deforestation, slowly infrastructure arrive. At this point, they buy the land. But what do the cattle rancher that sold the land? They go to spend their money at Bahamas. No, they are going to invest the money in new, wider land at the deforestation front. Wider because land without infrastructure is much cheaper. So they can, so actually deforestation is increased. There is a continuous new cycle, and there is a synergy between those two industries. There is a research made by scientists that analyze the output of the industries in the Cerrado, and they realized that actually, yes, fair enough, the cattle ranching is the one that carry on the deforestation, but their output in the last 20 years remains stable. What increased in terms of output are the industry that came behind them and pushed them. It's soy, it's eucalyptus, and it's sugarcane. There is also the issue of fires. Eucalyptus is a species that is in its natural environment in Australia, live with fires, needs fire, and promotes fires. With the fire, with the heat, the bark of the eucalyptus start to roll and can create capsules that fly with the wind and bring the embers kilometers and kilometers far away, so far beyond any security fire trench. So, and at the same time, the eucalyptus provide a huge amount of homogeneous flat land, or the same with the same amount of wood, dry soil, the perfect condition for and also suck a lot of water. And there has been many studies also recent in this area to showing that actually water is becoming less and less. And also communities also denounce the same thing, that all their water supply disappear after a few years after the development of plantations, and in time of climate change, this is a serious issue. So just to wrap up this huge increase, we now produce every year and consume every year around 430 million of tons of paper. And if we would be able to put all this paper in a single stack of A4 copy paper, we would get a tower as high as the distance, 20 times the distance between the moon and the Earth. So pretty much. There is an interesting study made by the University of Kassel for WWF Germany, analyzed how much timber can the forest, not just for paper, for everything, also for textile, for chemicals, for construction, for everything, for biomass, burning, and so on. And they analyzed how much wood the forest can produce without concerning about environmental balance, biodiversity, just production, and how much we consume globally in terms of fibers. Well, a safe amount is 3 billion cubic meter. But some people say no, it's more actually until 4.2 it's possible. But what we consume globally is 5 billion of cubic meters, and it will be 6.6 by 2050. And if everybody in the world would consume what we consume in Europe, it would be more than 10. So we are already beyond the capacity, without any environmental consideration, the capacity of the forest to reproduce the wood fibers we consume. And the most relevant thing is that the increasing of consumption is not for reading, is not for culture, is not for extraction, is not for products that we really need, is for throwaway single-use packaging. So it would be really important to think about, instead of shifting from one commodity, from one material to another, to reduce the the material that we really, the products that we really do not need and could be easily be substituted with a little bit of better logistics instead of running in this taking part in this run to the cheapest product, which at the end will also not really favor the European countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. So, any comments, questions?
Thank you for bringing up this kind of scale question and also the kind of the historically growing quantity of paper products, even though there has these internal shifts. But I was wondering, is this shift from plastic to paper actually happening, even though there is this discourse, since, as you mentioned in the next sentence, most of the products are hybrids of fossil fuel plastics and paper products. So actually they go quite hand in hand in this specific like packaging business. And when we think about China, China is very huge also in petrochemistry, and growing amount of world petrochemistry is in China. And as it seems, it's now also the pulp production. And perhaps one of the reasons is because this, at least in the packaging business, it might be that in other product categories, there is this tension between fossil fuels and wood products. But in this packaging category, it seems that they are quite symbiotic actually, and they feed upon each other. And then we have these kind of trends of both product categories growing.
Yes, Sergio.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, we work a lot with also our colleague working on plastic, and we are on the same page because those composite products, these hybrid products that include all of them, actually are unrecyclable. So in theory, they are sold as a progress, but they are not. Also true that many of those commitments by companies has not been completely implemented. This has been slow, but actually they are, I think, commitments in the wrong direction. So this is not, it's a bad news, but not so bad. The thing is that, we should rethink the logistic on how we distribute and consume products. The core, at least for pulp and paper, is not the product itself, is the logistics.
We have a question online currently. We also have about 15 minutes left in our stated time. So do we want to take that question, or do you want to at least give your presentation and then whomever can stay for additional questions can?
Well, I don't really have a presentation, so.
So continue on with the question.
So Henry can.
Wonderful. So Henry, if you'd like to ask your question, please.
Thank you, Sergio. I was just pointing out that when you do advocacy work in Brussels, in EU, almost every other product has a better image than paper and pulp. And do you see that in your line of work that you do a lot of cooperation with the plastic side, but in Brussels, I just wanted to tell that it used to be so, and it's still so, that the paper and pulp is seen very, very bad for the environment. And then, for example, steel, glass, or plastic is seen better one. And this is directly linked to that, how much voice has the paper industry in the EU. So do you have this is maybe more just like a comment to you, so that there is also this advocacy side there. If you go to EU, that the pulp and paper is already a little bit on the backside, so to say, that they also have this kind of problem, and this might be also one of the reasons that they are really trying to advocate these packages as a real recyclable product. Thank you.
Well, honestly, I have seen a huge lobby effort around the packaging legislation in Brussels. So actually, I think it's more complicated, but yeah.
Yes, I know that it's the spearhead of the paper industry are those packages, and I've been there when they're doing that packaging thing, and then they made this new organization Pack to Go. That was a new, and I was there when it was made up. So Yeah, but yeah, you're probably right about that. It's a little bit more complicated, but as I have seen it there in Brussels. But yeah, thank you for your answer. Yeah.
Just a little note. The thing is not if it's better or bad plastic or a plastic product that is being reused for 100 of times is better than any paper single use. And that's our colleagues on working on plastic agree on that. We should also change the life cycle analysis should include all those elements because yeah, and definitely we should shift a model of just taking and throwing away.
Yeah. Exactly. It's about the chain of custody that you have to have in those both products. Yeah. Thank you.
We have a question online from Ville.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, maybe this can be for Sergio or also for Jakob, and that somehow traditionally people were living in connection to forest and they didn't need any packaging. They find from the forest what they could use to live. And the more all over the forests are taken for this kind of packaging purposes, it means that, of course, that the more all other products are produced, the more you need packaging. So it is a kind of secondary product for all other products in some way. And when people are using the land and forest directly for living there, they don't need much packaging. The need of packaging comes from the fact that lands and forests are taken for needs of globalized exports to send somewhere else what you have in your land. And this is, I think, the problem that that it is not a question so much about the wood itself, that what are its qualities and how it should be, what is the technology and so on. The question is that for whose purposes it is used. If it is used for purposes of people who are living other side of the world, it is quite clear that it is causing a lot of damage, because not only because of the pollution and this and that, but because it is taking away the possibilities that people could live sustainably in the area where they are living. Nobody in the world can anymore live sustainably in the area where they are living, because the area is taken either for producing oil or for producing cellulose or for producing this or that to the global market. And I think this is something that I think which is missed when we are making these calculations on sustainability, whether it is production of wood or cellulose or for oil or whatever. We are not really taking into account the impact that we are displacing the possibilities how people could earlier live sustainably in the same land, which is now taken away for all these kind of purposes. But I think that somehow when we are making these scenarios and calculations, there is not much taken into account this impact that the possibilities of people to live by the regeneration of Earth's biodiversity are taken away through this kind of productions.
Yes, thank you, Ville-Veikko. And Jakob, would you have some reflections for the questions or to Sergio?
Well, maybe two. What Ville-Veikko just said is right, of course, but not that many people anywhere in the world live only or mostly from their own land. I mean, it starts with food production. So we live in a very different economy in all over the world. The amount of people living from their own lot, so to say, is not that big anymore. So with that comes then production and secondary production like packaging, like Ville-Veikko said, and so that would be a totally different world. And we can discuss that, but we are not returning to such a world very soon. But one remark or maybe question is that to Sergio is that I doubt those projections about growth of packaging and board production, and the reason is really China's economy and also the world economy as a whole. China's population is declining. Its economy is close to stagnation when you compare with record levels from before, and the world economy has for a long time been growing very slowly, and now some guy is making some moves to make it even more slow. So I really can't understand why these some of these consultancy companies, or what are they, are saying that we will have tens of billions of more pulp and packaging in only a few years. I really doubt it from an economic viewpoint. But then maybe the bigger issue is that I rather strongly claim that we are approaching really a limit of how much forest will be used. I mean, land grabbing and many other measures or operations are happening in many places, but still not in all places, not even the southern hemisphere. And in the northern hemisphere, it's not possible to increase the forest use anymore. The forests are not growing. They are overused also here. Forest fires and pests are really affecting the volumes that can be used. So I don't get it how we even could expand the forest use. Of course, if we use the forest and the fiber and the recycled fiber even more effectively than now, some growth can happen, but not on the present type of production.
Yeah, and maybe, Sergio, please.
Just a little note. Probably you are right, but looking the thing on the other side, like in Brazil, in Paraguay, which is another country that where the paper industry is arriving now, or in Uruguay or in Indonesia even more. You see that the machine that is devouring the forest is very quick. Is very incredibly quick, and it's running now much more quicker than it was 10 years ago. So I'm really concerned. It's possible, as you say, that maybe this distraction will be for nothing, but I don't know. I see the machine running at full speed.
Yeah. So I would like to ask from you, what is?
We also have a question in the room.
Okay. Yes.
When you know.
So what is the potential of regulating this packaging industry, this global trend of putting everything into packaging, this e-commerce, like now everything comes in like cardboard, heavily packaged. Like, I don't remember that was the situation like 20 years ago. Like, would there be some other durable alternatives for that could be, reused? Like, I don't know, like earlier I understood in the US, for example, the milk came in glass bottles. Now it all comes in cardboard. Like, which one is more sustainable, and is this like an issue that there's so much lobbying for the cardboard by the industry so that they can sell the product of cardboard, that's also a reason why it's increasing, and that there's no willingness by politicians to regulate that growth market? So please, Sergio, you had some.
Yeah, there are many solutions. There are foldable boxes that are already used in the distribution, for example. There are already producers that sell you stuff in a box that arrive at your home, and then you take the stuff and the box go back in the same van. So it's a matter of logistics. But it's there actually. The problem is that now there is no this chance because the European regulation was there. It has been completely dismantled by a very aggressive lobby work, and now basically all the measure to promote reusable and to try to cut down a little bit single-use packaging has been completely eliminated. So I don't know.
That's interesting. So please.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the presentation. And I was wondering, like Jakob said, that no country is living from its own plot. But then I was wondering, because on the other hand, like if we think about kind of national climate applications, now Finland, for example, is subject to this EU LULUCF regulation and kind of nationally binding targets for carbon sinks. So, and now in January, the preliminary LULUCF numbers came out about forest land having turned into a carbon source in Finland as well. And then there were again these discussions about whether forest industry is sustainable in Finland. And these EU targets, they come with financial obligations. So I was just interested in hearing, of course, the Finnish paper industry is subject to all these global trends and demands and so on, but how about then this kind of financial obligations that might come from the other kind of direction? Like, do you see any potential here for additional kind of regulation, and what do you see like specifically like in terms of the Finnish industry? Like, is there any?
Well, a big issue that too. I won't go into that the details of it. My view is that what is really changing forest use in the Nordic countries and also in Northern America to a big extent is really that the forest resource is really scarce, so the prices are high. So and actually the loggings in Finland have decreased in the last years a little bit because of these high prices, and also the market is not very good. And so it's not totally new, but I would say that never before in so-called modern times has the forest industry in the northern hemisphere been in a situation where there isn't forest base for them a decent price. So they have to descale their production a little bit, and that's a big change, and start to effectivize their resource use and also maybe develop new products, because the present products are, in a way, it's too costly to produce them at the price that the market in a way sets, the global market sets. So that's one source of change actually. I can't say that for the southern hemisphere. I don't know the details so well that I could make a bold statement. But market pulp is a very low cost, but also low value product. So it's very, in a way, it's kind of very strange that this high technology business, as the forest industry is now depending on the most low value product of everything it produces. It's how come, and is this really stable in the long run to depend on such a product?
Yes.
We have one question in the chat, one question in the room, this lovely gentleman, and technically we are at the end of our stated time. So how would you like to proceed?
So maybe if you want to say...
Yeah, I can just make a quick continuation point on what Jakob was saying here. I was wondering about the impact of the green credits. Jakob, do you have any comment on, because we know that the forest industry, for instance, in Finland has been taking a very critical stance towards this kind of environmental credits, where more and more forest might end up being protected, so there would be then less and less forest to be used, which is kind of directly connected what you were saying here earlier. But do you see that, how would you describe this from the point of view of, if you kind of like try to take the point of view of the industry, can this have also positive impacts? Can it somehow like push them even stronger, like towards changing, or how do you feel about this?
Maybe I'm too pessimistic right now on this issue, but I have my analysis is that the forest industry is not homogeneous. It contains bigger and smaller companies, and the companies are not all the same. But as a whole, still, its position is still so strong, even more in politics than in the economy. It's much smaller than before in the economy, practically. But in politics, its position is very strong. So whatever happens in the European Union and European economy, the Finnish politics tries, in almost whatever situation, it tries to preserve the so-called short-term interests of the forest industry. The so-called, because it's not evident that anything that is lobbied is wise. But that's how things seems to happen still in the relation between Finland and EU in these matters. So once again, I fear, I hope I'm wrong, but I fear that the forest industry really changes its strategies and operations only when something more radical happens with its present business model. And that happens mainly through the market, which might then decrease or stop growing, or that our products perform poorly in the competition with those from South America or whatever other producer, and then we have to figure out how to proceed into a different direction. But before that kind of crisis and an awakening, that we can't just return or try to find a way to return to some old model. Only then bigger changes might unfold.
Maybe as a comment to this discussion, so yeah, as Sergio said, there's new huge pulp mill projects in the pipeline in South America, in Paraguay, Paracel company with a lot of Swedish capital there, and then there's all this Tres Lagoas investment in Mato Grosso do Sul, and it's going inland. And I would guess that much of this increase in the use of cardboard globally has actually not come from demand or need, but because first you started to produce in mass scale this cheap pulp in these new pulp investments, and then because it's so cheap to produce this commodity, then the companies start to market these new product lines, packaging almost everything, the new packaging and so on. So a big part of this, use of unneeded use comes from this production of lower unit cost commodities. And that's not only the pulp, but also like soybeans. You see that in the consumption of meat in China and so on. So there's a lot of stuff from the point of production that should be also studied, not only the kind of demand and regulation. And as Sergio was saying, I think it would be interesting to hear what are the kind of more specific packaging and cardboard product lines that are growing faster. Like where is the bulk going? Is it more like this large industrial scale packaging, or is it more consumer products and so on? Jakob knows better the situation in the Nordic countries and the Nordic hemisphere, so which might be quite different from the south. So
no, I can't really comment on that.
Yeah, but yeah, we had also, maybe if we still 10 minutes max, we continue.
Yeah,
that's
maybe
okay.
we could take our question in the room and then the question online, and then maybe 2 questions in the room and 1 question online, and then say our advice for today. So maybe we can first, and then Ville, we will get to you after this question, and then we'll do 1 final question in the room.
Thanks, Sergio. It was interesting to see that there is so many, or the capacity planned is so huge. I didn't know that there are these kinds of plans. I work on this topic mainly through the climate perspective, and here to the earlier point, I see that we have a good accounting system for these IPCC rules through which we account for stock changes in forests and other land systems. And then there is the political sphere as well, that at the time we don't have political will to act in a way that we would reach or stay within a carbon budget that is measured with this accounting system that we have. And I think this land sector is very much a problem because there we count for emissions in the countries where they happen, not where they are consumed. So this question of do we want more pulping in, for example, Latin America, is very much a question of justice, I think, and the carbon budget allocation, because the countries can in this framework decide, or they are allocated a share of the budget, and then if they want to consume this part of the budget with LULUCF emissions, I don't know. And I would really like to hear your point on this. Do you think it can be argued that it's fair and just to expand production in specific parts of the world?
Yeah. Well, I think you're a better expert on accounting for climate emissions than I am. I think what you're talking about returns to this departure in the 90s, 30 years ago, where biological emissions, biogenic CO2 was exempted from all emission goals. And the reason was then that bioenergy was thought to be our hero, solving the climate issues of energy production. Okay, it has done a part, but we have had other solutions then. And so it's an anomaly that all biological production from agriculture and from forest is exempted from these. There are no goals no goals that are attached to any means and sanctions for agriculture or for forestry or for forest industrial production or bioenergy production. And they are counted. They are accounted. You know how that works. But eventually the result is that people are worried and people like you know the figures, but they are not part of the climate discussion, except for for the forest sink discussion. That's the only place where we have that discussion, and that's really a strange loophole, so to say. That we even can't compare big industrial sectors. We can't compare steel industry with forest industry because forest industry is not subjected to these calculations and to sanctions and everything, or to what you call this emission trade. So it looks like it has no emissions at all. It's not true, of course. They are big, but they are not counted and treated as such. And that's really a strange setting.
Yes, definitely they should be counted, those emissions that the eucalyptus plantations cause and that the pulp mills cause. They are not calculated anywhere, so it's a weird situation. I mean, this whole idea of packaging being green or whatever, carbon neutral is like bogus if you look at the real carbon emissions from the soil when you use eucalyptus plantations to Pampa and so on, what happens with the sector. But yeah, Ville-Veikko, you had a comment, and then we have the last comment from here.
Yeah, my comment is just that it is of course true that quite few people in the world today live from the local soil directly, but the issue is anyway that we here consume maybe 20 times more than average people in India, and now this that we consume here so much results to the situation that they can't live from their own soil. But if they would have a kind of possibility to decide, the situation could be quite different. So it is not the same thing how we are dependent on global consumption and how they are dependent. We are dependent because we want to buy more and consume more, and they are dependent because they don't have their land is taken away. Our land is not taken away in a similar sense. And for example, in India, you know, there is about 110 million indigenous peoples who have quite recently still lived in forest quite self-subsistently. And the overall area where they have lived is maybe about 2 times size of Finland. So their population density is maybe 20 times thicker than in Finland. And still they have survived, and the forests have survived. But now when all the forests are taken away from them to our purposes for different metals and different energy production and this and that, then they lose that possibility. And this loss is not calculated in any of these current calculations of sustainability of land use and so on. But that's just what I wanted to point out.
Thank you, Ville. Oh, yes.
Maybe about the market shock or getting rid of the market pulp through a kind of market shock. I'm thinking, or I want to push us like a bit further on this. What would it look like in Finland? Does it mean that the companies that are most dependent now on the market pulp, they have to go down before anything actually changes? Is this the right implication?
Yeah, kind of, but that is not how it happens, if it happens at all. So my guess is that if the market, especially for this northern softwood pulp, shrinks or gets less profitable, then the consequences will be seen in the Nordic countries, but also in Northern America. So some or even a lot of factories will be closed, and mostly the older small ones who can't compete in the market of low prices and low demand. But the big companies will, if nothing else happens than that, the big companies will survive because they have many segments and business areas, and they can adjust. But it will affect forest use to some extent, because it will mean that about maybe 10 million cubic meters loggings will decrease. So in a forest sink perspective, strictly, that would be a good development, but it's not sure it will happen. Happen because at least the big companies are very good to adjust their operations, but of course some things might happen, and especially in places where we have struggling smaller companies or smaller units, and you can find those even in Finland, but especially in Canada and in USA, if you talk about the northern hemisphere.
Yeah.
So that it's too much to call that a game changer, but it would at least change this routinous thinking, where there is always some demand growth and some profitability in the present production, and so that image will then not vanish, but it will not serve as the let's say eternal hope of the forest industry and the Finnish society, that we will always have growth for our forest industry somewhere.
Interestingly, I think that Metsä Group has had this, at least in their public talking, for quite many years. Ilkka Hämälä has said that this resource has become scarce, and now we have the best factories in the world, and now if the resource become more scarce, we will survive and the others will go down. he has talking about this like pudotuspeli, tehtaiden pudotuspeli.
Right. So
I guess this is like their plan is that we have the most efficient factories and they will do the same stuff, but maybe on a bit smaller scale.
Yeah.
But I guess this market shock doesn't lead to a kind of major structural transformation. It's only like a bit smaller, but the same.
Yeah. So in a way, I share his view quite to a big extent. So it is a shock, but it's not really a major shock yet. So to make a bigger change, then more things should happen, mostly on the market, but also on the European level through regulation. But that is very hard to speculate about.
Yes, thank you. So Sergio, maybe some comments. You are muted.
Just a little note that Finnish technology is going to South America and to Southeast Asia. Who build the mills there? It's Valmet. So I wouldn't say that technology is better because it's exactly the same technology, but resources, land, work, and incentives, state incentives are much more profitable. So if you go in a competition on the lowest price and the biggest bulk amount of production, there is no competition in the future.
And do you have some comments, Franz Anton?
Not really at this point. I would like to thank everybody for a great discussion. Thanks also to everyone online, Sergio, and everybody else who has been commenting and participating. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any last words, Jakob?
Well, this is maybe odd, but it's it would have been interesting to hear from maybe some listeners in Latin America or North America or whatever place, because any country has its own story and some own perspective. So, and one country which is very interesting is Canada, because there you have had the biggest forest fires, biggest forest pests in the northern hemisphere, so there some of the issues we see also in Northern Europe and in Europe are really there to be seen, have been there to be seen for many years now, and of course not only for good but very much for bad as well. But you can really see that if you would apply the Finnish discussion of today to Canada, they would say, "What are you talking about? The forest volume is shrinking rapidly. You talk about expansion, about new products when our forests are burning, and so you really should, if you want to understand global forest use, you also should look at the places where the ecological and other problems are really exaggerated or can be seen in real time, and it has been like that for a long time in Canada and also in some other places. Not to say that is the truth of the whole, but also to learn from those, in a way, radical bad examples.
Yeah, that sounds like a good topic for another session on the rising role of nature's agency due to the climate crisis in Canada, Central Europe, also in Finland, South America, this fragile eucalyptus plantation situation. So.
And do not forget that now the major forest owner in Canada is Asia Pulp and Paper, the company that deforested Indonesia.
Exactly.
You're absolutely right. They own Domtar, the old Canadian company. Yeah, right. Yes.
Thank you so much for this discussion, and it will be coming out in the recording and